This is LBC News.
6:22. I'm John Stratford. Here are the headlines. Keir Starmer's been defending his response to the Iran war, saying he's focused on providing calm, level-headed leadership in the national interest. This after criticism from Donald Trump and other British allies. And there's been further criticism from the US President this afternoon, who has said that Keir Starmer should be helping the US in Iran without question. One other significant news story to bring you this evening. Britney Spears has been arrested in California, reportedly on suspicion of drink driving.
This is LBC News.
We're bringing you the latest on the situation in the Middle East. Keir Starmer went to Downing Street, to the briefing room today, to give an address to the nation, saying that he is focused on providing calm, level-headed leadership in the national interest, following some criticism of his response to events in the Middle East in recent days, from Cyprus, Bahrain, the UAE, among them, and of course also Donald Trump as well. And there has been some further criticism coming Keir Starmer's way from Donald Trump, from the US President, this afternoon. Let's turn to LBC News US correspondent Simon Marks. More criticism from the US President for the Prime Minister.
Yes, John, more incoming for number 10 Downing Street. President Trump has spent the morning here, and this is becoming characteristic of the way in which he is operating during this joint US-Israeli war on Iran, picking up the telephone and calling a whole variety of different reporters that he handpicks for one-on-one brief telephone interviews. And one of them today was conducted with a reporter for the New York Post tabloid up in Manhattan. The president was asked about reports that he had called Keir Starmer a loser in private conversations. He appears to have evaded that slightly. He doesn't use that word in this interview. He repeats his claim that Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill, and then goes a little bit further than he's gone before in terms of renewing his criticism of the Prime Minister. It was very disappointing, he says, of the Prime Minister's prevarication over the extent to which he was willing to back the attack on Iran. He should be giving us, without question or hesitation, things like bases, says President Trump, referring, of course, to those UK bases from which American pilots want to fly missions in the direction of Iran. The president added that he was taken aback by Sir Keir's resistance to working with the Pentagon, given the nature of the transatlantic relationship that Keir Starmer himself today was arguing is still an active, ongoing special relationship. As you will have heard earlier on LBC News, the Prime Minister pointed to ongoing cooperation between London and Washington over Iran and said that is the special relationship in action. Well, that does not appear to be the way in which President Trump views things. We should certainly be able to count on them, he told the New York Post. I was very surprised at Keir, very disappointed. And, you know, this argument that the Prime Minister should have been lining up behind the US President without question certainly appears to be something that is going to dog the bilateral relationship going forward. And just a reminder that all of this pile-on against the Prime Minister that is being unleashed by the American President comes a matter of weeks before the King and Queen are due to journey to the United States to begin commemorations of America's 250th birthday, and then later in the year, of course, Prince William and the Princess of Wales are also supposed to be here for the World Cup, and possibly also for the big 250th birthday celebrations on July the 4th. You've got to wonder how all of this is going to affect that.
Indeed. And Donald Trump's also been talking about who should be Iran's next leader. He says he needs to have a say.
Yes, and he's said that in a couple of different ways today to two news organizations. He did a telephone interview with Politico and a telephone interview with Axios, and in slightly different ways has described his determination that he is going to play a leading role in determining the next leader of Iran. And bear in mind that this is a Trump administration that officially says regime change is not part of the plan in Iran. It's not one of the list listed objectives that the White House has provided for the ongoing war, although President Trump keeps talking about it. Asked how much influence he expects to have over Iran's future leadership, he told Politico, "I'm going to have a big impact, or they're not going to have any settlement because we're not going to have to go and do this again." He says, "We'll work with the people and the regime to make sure that somebody gets there that can nicely build Iran but without nuclear weapons." Now, that appears to be an indication that there are some circumstances in which he is willing to work with remnants of the regime. One person that he's definitely not prepared to work with is the son of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who, of course, was killed on Saturday in that massive attack on his compound in Tehran. He's told Politico that the late supreme leader wouldn't give the keys to the kingdom, or the keys to the Islamic Republic, rather, to the son, as they say he is incompetent. In a separate interview with Axios, he has described the son as being a lightweight and has said that it's pointless if the Council of Experts, which gets to pick Iran's next leader, it would be a waste of time if they picked the son. But then going back to the Politico interview, he says that the United States is going to work with them to help them make the proper choice, because he wants to avoid having to do this again in another 10 years. Now, whether by that he means he's going to work with the regime is unclear, but in the interview that he gave to Axios, he cited the example of Venezuela and Delcy Rodriguez, who, of course, was Nicolas Maduro's number 2 until the United States attacked Venezuela, removed Nicolas Maduro from power, transported him to a detention center in New York where he's awaiting trial on narco-terrorism charges. And now the United States is working with Delcy Rodriguez as she runs the country and leads everybody else who was in Nicolas Maduro's government. So again, he's sort of raising this idea of a kind of Venezuela-style settlement. How he sells that to the Iranian people is very, very unclear, but he's expressing confidence today that he is selling it to the American people, despite polling that shows he is completely underwater with the American people over this decision to launch an attack on Iran. He says people are loving what's happening. Now, I don't know where he gets that information from, but it's not showing up in any of the opinion polls that are published here.
Possibly just in his own head, maybe. There's also this suggestion that the US might be about to back Kurds to launch an offensive within Iran, and if that were to happen, they would potentially be rather outgunned, mightn't they?
Well, outgunned, and also, I mean, it's just such a massive task because Iran is such a huge country. It would also cause ructions in the bilateral relationship between the United States and Turkey, a key ally of NATO. We know from various reports here that the CIA has been drawing up plans absolutely to equip the Kurds with more munitions and to encourage them to engage in an incursion of Iran, viewing them perhaps as being the boots on the ground who are going to go in and get the job done of either igniting regime change or bringing about those some of those other objectives that the United States says that it has, including making sure that the Iranian government is never in a position to get its hands on nuclear weapons. Yesterday, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, told reporters that the president had spoken to Kurdish leaders with respect to a U.S. military base that is in northern Iraq, but she said any report suggesting that the president had agreed to any plan to send them across the border, this was yesterday, was false and should not be written. But certainly there is speculation here that it is very much in the minds of President Trump that the Kurds are a card that he can play. way, they would find themselves on the receiving end of ongoing assaults by the Iranian government. And indeed, Erbil in northern Iraq has already been rocked by explosions on several occasions since Saturday, when the joint US and Israeli military operation got underway. But certainly we were told yesterday that the president has spoken to Kurdish leaders. By the way, going back to Keir Starmer, we now know from the Prime Minister that the last time he spoke with Donald Trump was as long ago as last Saturday. So President Trump's been calling all sorts of people, but it doesn't appear that the Prime Minister over the last 2 or 3 days has been one of them.
And we have no idea where we're going with this, do we? We have no idea how this ends.
We have absolutely no idea how this ends, John, because the United States government has no plan. There is simply no plan. This is a president making this up as he goes along, engaging in a game of geopolitical 52-card pickup, going to war last Saturday, according to the Secretary of State on Tuesday, because the Israelis said to the White House, we're going in. That, in the Secretary of State's telling on Tuesday, resulted in the Americans deciding that they also had to go in because they were concerned that as soon as Israel started attacking the Iranians, US forces in the region would be on the receiving end of reprisals by Iran for an assault that Israel was conducting. Yesterday, the Secretary of State said, no, he never said that at all, even as one reporter from CNN started reading back to him exactly what he had said just 24 hours previously. But the Secretary of State very much aligning himself with the president's telling, who yesterday claimed that it wasn't Israel that had forced his hand, he had forced Israel's hand and told them it was time to go in and make these moves against the Iranians. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, yesterday said that the war could go on for 4 weeks, it could go on for 6 weeks, it could go on for 8 weeks, it could go on for 3 weeks. So they clearly don't have any current idea of how long this is going to last, but there are some indications here that Pentagon planners are beginning to realize that this is not going to wrap up quickly at all, as, for example, Vice President J.D. Vance had said that he wanted to see. He initially expressed hostility to the idea of this attack, but then said if you're going to do it, you've got to go in hot and hard and get it done as quickly as possible. But with each passing day, the scale of what Donald Trump has bitten off here is certainly becoming apparent to military planners here, as it is becoming to the US allies in Europe, who increasingly are themselves concerned about where exactly President Trump is taking everybody.
Simon Marks, LBC News US correspondent.